'cause I didn't need it. Whoever I was when it started, I think that they'll stay in the past. That's all that I've lost when it's over. I'll be happy with that. I'll be happy with that. I'll be happy with that.
I don't have the inflection for commercial rap appeal, and I'm a little too subversive to be verified. Now if someday I can reach 10K, I'll retract it, I'll admit it, and I'll clarify. But in the meantime, I'll be underground where the air's beyond rarefied. Honestly, it's barely there, and honestly, it's paradise. I don't have a label that can tell me how my lyrics aren't conducive to the royalties of parasites. I'm just one man in an 05 GMC with an iPhone 8 and a low-end mic trying to take down the DNC. Stay up late and go into a rage and record all night, then wake the next day like, damn, that's me. So trust me when I tell you that your fury will articulate the things you're afraid to believe. You can tell 'cause I shake when I speak, that there is anger in the air we breathe, and it is liberally applied like the label of progressive, slapped on every neoliberal spamming you their message, slapped on every Buttigieg who tells you cozy up to your oppressors. Pardon me if I don't trust a word out of Radigan the Lesser. Shut your eyes, love, the more you know the better. The worse you see, the sweeter. A peaceful revolution doesn't really fill a theater. A flint will start a fire, and flint water douses it. But if you think it's safe to drink, you must have skipped the Kool-Aid and gone for the ether. 'Cause I think you're fucking dreaming. Are you? No? Good. Me either. Alright. Let's take a short breather.
myself, 'cause now you can see it. And I don't wanna say that I lost myself, 'cause I didn't need it. Whoever I was when it started, I think that they'll stay in the past. That's all that I've lost when it's over. I'll be happy with that. I'll be happy with that. I'll be happy with that. I think that they'll stay in the past, if that's all that I lost when it's over. I'll be happy with that. 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 I'll be happy with that.
You don't think I see you crying in your cars, but I do. Sometimes I can feel it at a red light, someone at my side trying to muddle through. See them wiping their eyes in their rear view, Like black hole sun in the sky, why the fuck won't you come when I need you? Well, this moment in time is as close as we'll be and as far as I'll meet you. Two windows in between us, new moon in the house of Venus. One stranger who sees you and reads your features knows that your alibi might be tight, but it's not quite leak-proof. So if you're sitting at the light and you're crying in your car, just know that I see you. And it's a 50-50 that I'm bloodshot, gun-shy, once bitten, twice tried, ribs pried wide to the sky till I'm see-through.
That's you, in case you don't recognize yourself.
You don't think I see you struggling to breathe, but I do. I see you stumble in your everyday grief like I do. I try, but I do. I'm twice bitten too. My mind's split in two. My knuckles bright white from the 10 to the 2. And the song in my head is the theme for a fugue. A state of decay through the filter of corporate news, where they edit the grays and the blues. They whitewash the brown till they drown out the natural hues. And then it's just another fact to refuse, that the corporate ladder's for hanging the company noose. Consider it one of your perks, after all it's communal in use. So you can come and hang till your legs go limp and they're shaking you loose. Now you watch 5 co-workers opt for the alternate exit, neatly suspended above where you wolf down your food. And your company gets its incentives embellished by harping on wellness, suggesting you'd best take time for your mental health after your 14 hours are through. Like we gave you a bottle to piss in and fixed up a noose on the crossbeam. Christ, what more can we do? So if you struggle to breathe any moment that you aren't asleep, then remember, most of Americans fear for their savings, fear for their shelter, fear for their babies. You aren't the fringe of exception, but rather a perfect example of capital's rule. And you're far less alone than the ruling class tells you is true. You're far less alone than the ruling class tells you is true. I see you crying in your cars, but I do.
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days and to still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to save. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe? I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days and to still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe?
Fresh off the masses, the brand new cancerous growth, who has come here to vie for your vote. Come here to cry at the camps and to mourn at the shore for the bodies that float by the wreck of an immigrant boat. Then it's back to their luxury home, couple security booths and a moat. Couple cigars, little escargot, little booze and a soak. Just breathe in the steam and the smoke. Pink salt, lavender, candles are low. Shit, when you do what you do, gotta lighten the load. And he got a life of his own that's a sight to behold. And it's a lot to control, to decipher the code or to siphon the soul. The cost of a good night's sleep for the working elite is a bargain, no matter the toll. Worth any wager, and that comes straight from the mouth of the means to the goal that will swallow us whole. Ripe for the picking if you don't mind mold, and you know I don't. Maybe we're pleasantly prone, maybe we're taking a licking, compliantly ticking and ticking and ticking, but never explode. No, I don't deliver the prettiest image, but damn if it isn't an accurate vision of natural fission, of rage at the system and abject heartbreak, patiently waiting for any who will listen. That little blue bird who was watching your words is a federal carrier pigeon, a Langley first. It's a patient observer who hears what it wants and is trained for the worst. Oh, you got nothing to hide. They'll be the ones to decide that after they root through your purse, after they read all your text, after they raid your apartment, confiscate all of its contents, then conjure up evidence out of the air on a wing and a prayer and malicious intelligence nonsense. Any presumption of innocence long since gone, right along with your comforts and constants. Historically first they will come for the communists. So why in the fuck would I say I'm a communist? Well, it might be I love my community more than the monsters of opulence who are holding us hostage, who are vomiting promises. Might be I'm all done seeing our pensions and benefits hard.
Have just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me. Us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Who are these people?
It's us. We're these people.
I love that intro. I love that intro so much.
I'm here with a different co-host this time, Oz LaFave.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on.
Friend of the show, DJ Joe Nice. How are you, friend?
What's good?
And you hear Nick say this all the time. The United States is the most propagandized country in the world.
We are so fucked, you guys. Again, I'm sorry for being cynical, but seriously,
No.
we're fucked. We are
Right.
fucked. We are well and truly fucking fucked.
Just appreciate all the work that you do and the platforms that you all are providing.
Hey, you. Doing good. How are you guys doing?
And as independent media, we have a responsibility to be, we don't hide our bias, obviously, but we must stay true to the facts.
What's up, Pam?
Cheers and salutations. Smoke them if you got them.
But I am here with a man that I've been waiting to talk to for the last couple of years, Nico House.
As an educator, what I would suggest is that, first of all, podcasts like these are made.
So you need to be an example for the people and for the future, knowing that your words can actually change the future.
What do you feel? What would Kwame Ture feel we would have to do?
Well, politics is every day of every minute. You have to be aware of what's going on. Not voting on one day, so the vote has never meant anything. So I'm not a Democrat.
See, I would call that guy the Black Obama.
No. The issues that we talk about, listen to us.
As always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
INN News.
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
Colin, it's Wednesday. It's INN News. We're back.
Can you fix the screens, please?
Yes, you would like this, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, we're here again.
I can see your handsome face.
I know no one wants us to be here, but we're here. You're gonna have to deal with us anyway. INN News. Collin Radix-Carter. You know this by now. AKA Care Bear. Care Bear, how are you doing?
Good. Thank you guys. We took a week off last week. You
had some business
to finish up some stuff. Yeah, I had to finish up some work stuff that I needed extra time, and you had some stuff too.
Yeah.
Did I even get done?
I think
like your roof.
What? Oh no, it fucking didn't. Like, mother had a funeral to go to. Fucking shit happened. So it's like I'm gonna have to figure out another fucking week probably when that has to happen, you know. And it's been like raining nonstop anyway. Roof work's the worst. You have so much to deal with to try and like avoid and like, you know, anyway. But just trying to throw some more insulation up there.
Yeah. But we did a rewind episode. So rewinds, for those of you who are new, are basically like where we take a topic from previous segments and kind of compile them as a show. Last week you compiled them to a person, Robert Inglikesh, who I guess by now you can argue is probably one of our favorite investigative journalists collectively on the show as well as on the network. So we were able to feature his work, I guess, over the past year and change of the stories we've covered from him. So I hope you guys were able to recap some of his work. But we're back live. So thank you guys. And I'm on break for the summer. So we will have some plans for you guys that we're actually trying to schedule some interviews that we can do, especially in July, because I'm going to be out of the country for a bit, and I won't stream because time difference. So let us know in the chat, or you can let us know on Twitter at @GetIndieNews. Who should we interview if you would like us to, like, if you had the option? Hopefully the people that you suggest will be open to coming here. But yeah, that's definitely something we are planning to do for you guys in terms of, you know, kind of breaking the monotony a little bit, but also having some time that we have more flexible schedules, at least for me, for the next few weeks. So being able to do that. But yeah.
We brought some stories. We did the thing.
Yes. And as I told Reef last night, I felt in a way we're kind of playing catch up because there are a couple of big things that we have to report on. Other things that were big, I don't really care about personally. But such as but we were able to get some twists kind of on a couple of things. So first story tonight that I'm going to share is obviously there was a No Kings protest that occurred in, I guess, in every state in the country over this past weekend. I actually rolled up on one in DC last weekend as I was getting groceries. I did not partake. I got my groceries and went home. And we're going to talk about the hypocrisy of it. So to be fair, I wanted to give some nuance of people who felt that this was actually a good thing. And then from a conversation that Indy, you, and I had yesterday, I guess it was yesterday, we were having a conversation, just TBS, the three of us were having a conversation about this. And then Reef basically was like, Indy, you should rate this in the article. And then Indy was like, no, I don't want to. I already have it on notes on Substack.
I didn't want yet.
And so there was, I guess there was a back and forth for a while.
It's already done, dude. Here.
Right. I went to work out, and while I was working out,
it was done.
Yeah. Well, I think you sent it to me.
Yeah.
Of Indy actually did write the article based on his thoughts on it. Yeah. So we're gonna do Indy. Not favor, but we're going to highlight Indy in the article that he wrote regarding the hypocrisy of these protests. So as I said, that's our first segment. And then later on tonight, probably the biggest story over the weekend through now, Israel attacked Iran. So while obviously we are going to cover like the details of it, what we generally like to do is try and hear what people on the ground are saying. So I found an article from Truthout that I will read to kind of give that Iranian perspective, because especially now, given the context and the climate, we're not going to hear that side at all. It's just going to be a lot of hearsay from the West and Israel basically being like, we have to attack them for reasons. They have nuclear weapons, so we have to go after them. But we want to humanize the situation a little bit as we try to do, and bring in their perspective as well, because we like nuance here. We are trying to be multifaceted here. So you'll hear that. Plus, you'll hear from some of our friends on their view on the attack. And what did you bring, Reef?
Well, just to pivot, I brought an article about, there's been a bunch of nonsense put out in the news about, criminal migrants and Trump's, immigration policies and stuff like that. So I just figured we'd talk about that a bit. We've not that we haven't talked about this kind of stuff, but it's been a little drowned out in the foreign policy. So figured I'd pivot a little bit. And I brought another amazing article from Electronic Intifada about, it's going to be an interesting one. I think it's, what can you do for Palestine, and if you should even ask what you should do. That's, but we'll get into it. But yeah, that's what I brought. Just, a couple little articles and whatnot. Some demure little articles. But anyway, you ready to get started?
Yep. But before we get started, as we always do, we want to remind you all, we are demonetized by YouTube because we cover stories that are not popular and are not favorable to the algorithm. So no monies, but it's not as if YouTube was going to give us much money anyway. So in order for us to continue to pay our bills around here, we need your support. As we say every week, obviously we know money is tight for many of you all. Please take care of yourselves, your families, your communities before you give to us. That being said, if you have a little bit to spare and you would like to donate so that we're able to keep this show and shows on the network going, if you have a smartphone, you can scan the QR code you see at the bottom of your screen, at your screen there, or you can see the Ko-fi link at the bottom of your screen. You could type that in, and it will go right to our Ko-fi donation page. Or if you're on YouTube and if you're in the chat, you can type in !donate, all one word, and the Ko-fi link will pop up where you can click on it and you can donate as well from there. Anything will help, even as small as $1. And we will get all the proceeds pretty much through Ko-fi, right? Or most of it.
Yeah, most of it. I think it's generally all of it. I'd have to look specifically.
Yeah, we have to check into that. But yeah, but it's not
it's
like
much lower than everywhere else, which is why we chose it originally.
So, that of course, if you do not want to give through Ko-fi, you can give via CashApp or PayPal or Substack, especially if you're looking to be a monthly donator. Links to those sites will also in the description, as well as Reef highlighting them on the screen.
Yep.
And if you give any amount, you will end up on our Wall of Fame. Those who are highlighted in the brown are like our VIPs who give consistently and a lot. And we thank you guys so much for your generous donations. And if you're not able to donate, the best way, I would argue, to help support the network is by liking, subbing, and sharing our content. And thank you guys so much for doing that. In terms of our growth, we are growing steadily. We are close to 2,500. I will check later to see how much we're at. I think we're about 20 people away.
Something like that.
Under 20, I think, from 2,500. I'll check in a minute. or at least after this segment. But yeah, thank you guys so much, and we love you as always.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's get to our first one. There's no. Well, that's weird. You don't have the thumbnail in there. That's
What?
odd.
Oh, I missed that.
All right.
Okay.
Whatever.
That's all right. That's okay. I forgot to put that in.
Well, you brought this.
Yep. It's not as if you're going to look at it for a few seconds anyway. But
Yeah.
But like I said earlier, the No Kings protests occurred in every state over the weekend. As I mentioned, I saw a glimpse of it over the weekend doing errands. I skipped said protest. I did my groceries and came right home. But there were a lot of people who were saying, oh, it was a success given the amount of people that attended, you know, and like people made a lot of noise, obviously, about their displeasure about Trump and all the things. So we're going to do two things. We're going to be fair. We're going to talk about it from a positive point of view. And then thanks to Indy, we're going to dial that back and give more of what we collectively share as a critique. And you guys can let us know what you guys think in terms of the No Kings protest. So this article is written by Mike Ludwig from Truthout, where he reports 5 million people attended No Kings protests. How can we build on this? The protests were inspired by the idea that 3.5% of a population must rise up successfully, reject authoritarianism. So Mike, there we go. So Mike writes, can you zoom in? Thank you. Organizers say about 5 million people participated in No Kings protests against President Donald Trump and his administration's abuses of power in hundreds of towns and cities across the United States on Saturday, June 14th. Demonstrations, large and small, offered a sharp rebuke to Trump's decision to deploy the military in response to protests against immigration raids in Los Angeles. And now activists from various movements are moving to harness the backlash into a sustained movement capable of toppling Trumpian authoritarianism. The No Kings protests were inspired by the 3.5% principle, which posts that movements against authoritarianism that engage 3.5% of the population had never failed to bring about change.
Where's that
The demonstrations provided, I have no idea.
Where are they getting that shit from?
I should have looked into this, to be honest, but
yeah.
But again, we have a critique on this, which we'll share later, but we'll talk about that a little bit more toward after I'm done with that, at least, because I'm sure I know you have some thoughts.
Yeah, I can look it up.
The demonstration. Yeah, why don't you look it up while I continue reading this?
Yep.
The demonstrations provided people with a venue to call out Trump for his implementation of cruel and extreme policies that are tearing apart families and spreading fear in communities nationwide. The mass turnout of protesters nationwide also drowned out Trump's efforts to boost his strongman image by wasting up to $45 million in public funds to throw a gaudy military parade in Washington, D.C. on his birthday, which also happened to be on June 14th. So basically, this military parade, as I have said, was just an excuse to celebrate his birthday. Now, he could have just said that, right? I want to celebrate my birthday. I'm going to have this thing. Okay, fine. But he made it all about the Army, and it just happened to align with the 250th anniversary of the Army in this country. So he made it about that. But it just kind of seemed to be like, that this is more about you. You don't give a shit about the Army at all. So just say, I want to celebrate my birthday.
Clicking this link, which articles are always in the description if you want to go digging deeper, but in 1986, millions of Filipinos took to the streets of Manila in peaceful protest and prayer in the People Power movement. The Marcos regime folded on the fourth day. In 2003, the people of Georgia ousted Edward Shevardnadze through the Bloodless Rose Revolution, in which protesters stormed the Parliament building holding the flowers in their hands. Right, and this is supposedly nonviolent protests are twice as likely to succeed as armed conflicts, and those engaging a threshold of 3.5% of the population have never failed to bring about change. Again, no citation of that. You know, like, I would like to see where you're getting those numbers from, because I don't know if that's fucking accurate at all. Like, the amount of times violent fucking revolution has done some shit might be a bit more than that, you know, but what the fuck do I know? That's from David Robson, I don't know, at Harvard. So that's the basis. This dude's non-cited fucking bullshit. Anyway, continue. You need that though. There you go.
Yeah. Participants in the mass protests condemned the cruelty of Trump's mass deportation campaign, which is targeting law-abiding parents and school children. Protesters also decried the cuts proposed by Republicans in Congress to many of this country's basic safety net programs, cuts proposed to pay for Trump's signature tax cuts, which primarily benefit the wealthy. On top of these cruel policies are Trump's own autocratic behavior, raw rhetoric, and decadent displays of rank nationalism, including the president's decision to use the U.S. Army's anniversary celebration as an excuse for made-for-TV propaganda starring himself.
Right.
The demonstrations marked one of the single days of protests in U.S. history, according to Joe Dinkin, Deputy National Director of the Working Families Party. In America, we don't have kings, and Trump's abuses of power are generating a counter-reaction, Dinkin said in an interview. People are not liking what they're seeing from the administration. They don't like the attacks on civil rights, the attacks on Medicaid, and the attacks on food assistance. That is what is generating enormous backlash.
Here, I help you.
The proposed cuts to programs on which people depend stand in sharp contrast to the decadent parade Trump held on June 14th. On Capitol Hill, 60 veteran and military family members were arrested for staging a sit-in to protest against the parade and Trump's politicization of the Army. As veterans, we were able to break into the mainstream narrative about Trump's birthday parade and assert that Americans want money for people, not parades, wrote Brittany Ramos de Barros, an organizing director with About Face, Veterans Against the War, in a newsletter on Monday. De Barros added, there
it is.
Thank you. These kinds of celebrations of military might, while military is being used to terrorize immigrants in LA and starve children in Palestine, is beyond grotesque.
Yep.
People are also upset over Trump's show of force in LA, where the administration responded to protests last weekend by deploying U.S. Marines and National Guard troops in defiance of state and local leaders. With his constituents angry and fearful, Senator Alex Padilla attempted to ask questions during a press conference inside a federal building held by Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, but was quickly tackled by officers and handcuffed. Instead of apologizing, Noem doubled down, claiming the sitting U.S. Senator failed to identify himself inside a federal building in his home state. After a week of sensational news coverage and partisan attacks, support for Trump's approach to immigration began to slip in the polls. Americans were also uncomfortable with the president sending in the military to U.S. cities, with 47 pluralities telling pollsters they opposed Trump's moves in LA. Dinkin said it was critical that people are showing up for protests at a time when the Trump administration has literally arrested Democratic politicians for questioning.
Oh, I should be paying attention. Why is it not going? Do the thing. There you go.
questioning about the immigration crackdown, including Newark Mayor Ras Baraka and Representative LaMonica McIver in New Jersey. In LA, police roughed up and arrested union leader David Huerta for protesting peacefully against immigration raids last week. We need people to be brave in the face of authoritarianism, Dinkins said. From here, we continue getting organized in our communities in order to throw them out of power in the midterms and remove Trump from office pretty soon after that. Elections are the best way we have to remove this authoritarian threat, and getting organized in our communities is the best way that we do that.
Vote harder. Vote harder.
Right. Dinkins said the work of organizing against authoritarianism will look different in different places. For example, people in red districts must continue to hold town halls and confront Republican members of Congress over proposed safety net cuts and their refusal to rein in Trump's abuses of executive authority. In other jurisdictions, it might mean stepping up to run for local office yourself, helping to get educated on your rights. It might mean joining economic boycotts out there, such as the Target boycott, Dinkins said. Dinkins said that the Working Families Party is running 1,000 working class candidates up and down the ballot in various states this year and next, and voting remains a major bulwark to authoritarianism. The challenge is rebuilding trusting relationships with each other, despite the fractures in society created as Trump has sought to divide and conquer. It's Trump, and it's also the media environment that increasingly has people captured in feuds that only tell them what they want to hear, that is growing at the same time as a decline in participation in civic organizations and decline in the strength of unions, Dinkins said. These are the things that really connect us in trusting relationships, and that is what we mean by organizing relationships of trust.
Okay.
I'm just reading this again slowly. No, but he's saying what is going to have people trust each other is participation in civic organizing,
and like
strengthening unions,
right?
I thought you build trust in people by essentially, well, if we're speaking of politicians, actually having them do what they're supposed to do.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Right? But that's the problem that I have with this Dinkin dork here. It don't make no motherfucking sense. I mean, he's talking about it in terms of what we are supposed to do, not what the politicians themselves are elected to do.
The ones with power. Right.
Right. So it's like, oh, you guys have to be the ones. And some of you might remember when I confronted AOC at the Capitol several years ago, like my little viral moment. Like I asked her, because she was like, you got to do this. You are the ones that have to organize. And I said, what are you going to do?
Right.
Like
we're here organizing.
Right. We've been organizing. So how are you going? So what I really want, so what I was saying is, how are you going to capitalize on the organizing that is happening to elevate that to Congress and make a stand? And she didn't answer that. If anything, I got tuned out literally by Cori Bush. But yeah, it's just the idea of like, oh, you have to be the ones to organize. You have to be the ones that push the politicians. You. And it's never, oh, how about the politicians do the fucking job for a change and actually care about their constituents and actually move in a way that actually delivers for their constituent? Like, I'm not hearing that from this article, and I'm not hearing that from this guy. And as you said, it's more like you have to vote for these people in the hope that they're going to do something. Well, right now they're not doing anything. So what are you doing now to challenge them? Now he's saying, oh, you have to run for office yourself. But how's that any different from what's happening now? Like, you're gonna have people running, but have no moral like implications as to what their plans are. But then, more importantly, as I keep saying, a lot of these politicians are just coming in with money or the position or just fame to run. They're not vetted in terms of what they've been doing in their cities and towns. They don't have a record in terms of actually winning something for these constituents. So it's like you're getting random people who have no connection to their communities at all, who just decide out of, oh, I have the mindset to change the world, but they get easily corrupted. Like, that's how you build trust, is actually have people who are in organizing already actually doing the work that are elevated to these positions to make change, not just getting random people who get the feel of the wind of, oh, I should run because I hate this person, or in this case, I hate Trump.
Right.
But they have no record as to winning anything for the people that they're meant to serve. That's why we get into these problems with politicians all the time. And even like in New York, like with the mayoral race that's going on right now with whatever I forgot his name right now. But no record in terms of him actually winning something for New York or any borough that I know of. But I guess he just decided one day, oh, I'm just going to run because I can, which you have the right to do, but without a record of showing your capability of what you actually gain for people, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just feel like, again, in this article, I just feel in this article, it was just more subtle blame of, not blame, but like all the energy should be on us to do the work and not the politicians who in themselves. And if you're speaking against Republicans, fine. You didn't mention anything about Democrat politicians and what they should be doing right now, which is nothing. So that's the issue that I had with this article. But like I said, I wanted to be fair because there were people who were saying, including the Daily Beast, who, if actually you can go to this, basically was saying it was the biggest protest in U.S. history, which in and of itself, and I said this to you, I kind of felt away because like 4 years ago, I was participating in the marches for Medicare for All. We were in over 50 cities.
Right.
Like, obviously wasn't getting the crowds that this drew, but that wasn't reported on. That wasn't shown on mainstream media. Hell, even people within independent media didn't cover it. Like, with the exception of like Kyle Kalinske, but he gave the wrong information at like the 11th hour. And he himself didn't show up to the very thing that he tried to promote for Force to Vote. So yeah, I kind of fell away that this was claiming to be the biggest protest when it was just a day event for people to vent their grievances against Trump. Again, not to say you can't do it, but that kind of goes into what Indy critiques, and we had the discussion on last night, that he was goaded by Reef to write this. So this originally, to give Indy his flowers, he originally wrote this as a note on Substack, but he got goaded by Reef to actually write an article. So within an hour and a half, he did write this last night. So he titles this article, "The Hypocrisy of the No Kings Rallies." It was a weekend of lots of liberals holding signs and shouting in the streets. There were other groups represented, but there was no cohesive demand or messaging. So Indy continues. What was accomplished? So I've publicly asked multiple times here on Notes a few things about No King's Day that people here seem to be very excited over. I've gotten exactly one response from the 13 plus million people who attended one. What did the people attending the No Kings protest rallies yesterday accomplish? So
this is I
this
gave
was
him this. So this is after the event, right?
right.
To where they even changed the entire event's name. We've changed the No Kings thing or other events around the world to No Tyrant, so as not to mix messages in a country with a monarchy. I wonder which ones they mean. We're also swapping out No Crowns in favor of No Clowns. Come dressed as a Trump clown. DT himself or one of his cronies. Think bad? Blonde wig, orange face, dog red tie, or whatever gets your creative juices flowing. That's the voice in my head that read that. But
right.
dumb.
What happened Saturday is a result of when people turn off their critical thinking skills and just turn out because vibes and feels. There was no actual plan to stop anything, just to complain in public.
Yep.
So this is friend of the show, Jax. Actually, I'll read this a second. The rally was organized by the party that rigged their last three presidential candidates and partially funded by billionaire heiress of one of the largest employer in the country, who is directly responsible for millions of Americans who work for her company being underpaid, still requiring to be on food stamps, and not giving enough hours to earn a living. This is Walmart. I bought an assortment of tweets for receipts here. So shout out to our friend Jax.
Yep.
So this is the billionaire heiress of Walmart. Honestly, all of you should ban Walmart at all costs.
Yeah.
But she promoted the very thing. She promoted this protest against Trump, but yet she can't play the people that work for her company.
Right.
Make that make sense, people.
Yep.
So I honestly have not heard of most of these programs or organizations.
Right.
But there are a couple that we do know. AFT, I know very well.
Yeah.
ACLU.
Yeah.
Bernie's campaign.
Humanist Association.
American Humanists.
Tax fairness.
So basically all liberal organizations who hate Trump anyway sponsor these protests.
I've seen this one too. I don't remember their name. Black Lives Matter or Black Voters Matter. Sorry. Not to get them confused. Climate Defenders. Yeah. Catholics. Just all of the Catholics in one organization. Just Catholics. Nothing else.
Okay. 13 million people stood in the street or park or wherever with no real demand. Many of them voted for Kamala Harris last November, who, if we recall, was anointed as the eventual Democratic candidate by the donors, like a king/queen.
Yep.
So this is a tweet from Jason D. Meister. Imagine throwing a No Kings protest after your party refused to hold a primary, coordinated Kamala without a single vote, sued to keep RFK Jr. off the ballot, and attempted to remove Trump from state ballots only after your illegal lawfare scheme failed. If there was a modern-day monarchy in America, there could be one party you can point to, the Democrats.
See, here's where I disagree, because they're just puppets, bro. Go a little higher, Go a little higher up that feudal ladder. You'll find it. Those are the real kings and queens, dog.
As a reminder of very recent history, Joe Biden was the winner of the 2024 Democratic primary, even though most who voted for him were effectively forced to choose him. Throughout the primary, Democratic Party bosses made it clear that everyone that Biden was going to be the candidate Democrats had to vote for as the incumbent and the only serious challenge to Trump, which we all knew he wasn't.
Yep.
So what happens now? Now, back to Saturday's No Kings facepalm. It's her facepalm emoji here. Day. And now the Democratic Party, again, wants you to believe they would be a positive alternative to Trump and gave people an opportunity to yell Orange Land bad in the streets, funded by the corporate America largely getting in line with Trump's agenda. Tweet from @Maze Democrat Party, 2016, rigged primary. 2017 to 19, Russia collision hoax. 2020, uses a pandemic to steal an election. 21 through 24, shadow government in control while mentally unfit president is propped up. 2024, no primary candidate installed. 2025, fight the oligarchy. No kings.
Yep.
This seems like it was a little pink pussy hat party 2.0 8 years later. Everyone who attended went home that night, felt a little better about themselves for a day, and then watched World War III continue to unfold, supported by the same Democrats who organized the protest rallies. Nothing fundamentally changed.
Where have we
We'll
heard
get
that
more
before?
into Iran later. Not one person celebrating No Kings on Saturday wants to answer these questions. What happened on Sunday? What happened on Monday? Is there any follow-up? Any direct action? Any way to make elected officials uncomfortable so they change their behavior? Kind of what I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
So this is Ryan at Proud Socialist. The main problem with the No Kings protests is the prevailing liberal sentiment that everything would be great if Kamala was president when Democrats served the same corrupt capitalist and imperial system as Republicans. This is the moment to fight for a new party and a new system. At Primo Radical also tweeted, it's really convenient for Palantir that these huge protests starting up just as people started noticing that they're rolling out the infrastructure for a Black Mirror level surveillance state.
Yep.
At Horror Girl tweeted, I've been to a lot of protests during 2020 era. I don't know. I feel like it didn't get anything done. I'm not saying anything bad to the people that do protest, but I got to work like many other working class people. Thank you for bringing that down. Because I think in a lot of ways, even in protesting in some aspects is a privilege.
Yeah.
Because, it's, well, even on the weekend, there are people who have to work. So they can't necessarily take off in order to scream and complain, So thank you for bringing that perspective. At J7 Politics tweeted, March actively for the defunding of pigs only for liberals to vote for Biden so they could disappear from the movement. Biden then increases the federal funding to pigs, making the whole thing an infuriating cycle. Without militant direct action, nothing will change.
Yep. Derek Rose.
This is from Rose. As many people have pointed out, tomorrow's nationwide protests under the banner No Kings are being organized by left-wing groups with connections to the DNC. To me, this is not a surprise at all, nor it is just some hidden conspiracy. The left-wing orgs have long funded protest movements and rallies. What I think is unfortunate is that most of the right-wing or right-wing adjacent indie media is speaking about this as if it's a nationwide plan for mass riots organized by the leftist cabal. While the funding is worth noting, I don't think it is as coordinated as people keep claiming. I've been to many protests over the past 15 years and organized just as many. To pretend like every person who shows up is an agent of the Democrats is just silly. The attendees of these protests typically range from old liberals to college students and a radical leftist or two. And of course, the occasional provocateur. What I also find interesting is that the protest is literally focused on promoting No Kings, but because of the left-right propaganda, some conservatives are acting like that's a bad message. According to the No Kings site, they're speaking out because the Trump admin has cracked down on free speech, detained people from their political positions, threatened to deport American citizens, and defy the courts. I am 100% against those actions and understand why people oppose them. Does that mean I 100% support the people organizing tomorrow's actions? Obviously not. It's the same as me speaking at and attending rallies during COVID 1984 when there were Trump-loving, Blue Lives Matter ref-flaying right-wingers present. I made it clear I didn't support their views on certain topics, but could stand with them against COVID measures. Anyways, I will be attending, documenting, and interviewing people at the protest in Houston, Texas tomorrow. Stay
Which he
tuned for
did.
a report.
And he put stuff up. You go check it out.
Right. So Andy continues in response to
What happened?
any follow-up.
Right.
I didn't think so. Please prove me wrong or explain what was accomplished that has everyone acting like something was. So he tweeted, so he brought this meme from South Park because Indy's a Gen X person. Woke up this morning, still no king. You did it, Libs.
And I brought this one.
You brought this, I guess.
Because we got to bring Sailor Moon. Yeah. Brunch Libs. My job here is done. Leftists. But you didn't do anything. Wahahaha. Fucking away. Like, a mission accomplished. Fucking Bush on the fucking aircraft carrier. You know? Like.
Right.
Ugh. So. Go ahead.
You showed this. Hold on. You showed this several months ago. So this is from Michael White. So he talks about how protests are ineffective. So, so I think his mind is, we have to do things differently because the idea of protests now have been co-opted, according to him. So
yeah,
we'll play this and we'll finalize our thoughts.
Action.
But as you've studied history, and I know this is something you love, is just looking at historical movements, trying to understand how you create change. I mean, what are the ways change happens in your estimation now, if it's not taking to the streets?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the core messages that I'm trying to get across is I'm not saying don't protest. I think what I'm trying to say is we need to reconceive what protest is. Protest, if you look at it historically, what it is it's really a behavior that's culturally defined. People have protested differently throughout human history. I mean, during the American Revolution, they tarred and feathered people or pulled down their houses, or during the Civil Rights era, we marched. And I think now we've reached a point where the current repertoire of our tactics, they're broken. And the reason why they're broken, if you kind of look at why they're broken, is because the story underlying why we protest is false. And that basic story has something to do with that it's kind of a mystical, magical thinking. It has something to do with if you can get large numbers of people in the streets, they manifest some sort of greater power over their democracy, which makes perfect sense in a certain way, because if you can get so many people into the streets saying something, of course their leaders should have to listen to them, but it's not true. It's really not true. So we have to think about, well, how do the people manifest a greater power over their governments? And that gets into these questions of sovereignty, it gets into these other issues. And I think that that's really the direction we need to go, is that we can no longer rely on the fact that we are able to get millions of people into the streets. We act as activists as if that's extremely difficult, but recent years have shown us, since Occupy Wall Street, it's actually very easy for us now. We can get women to march, scientists to march, we can get Black Lives Matter to march. We have to kind of go differently, a little bit deeper. I think the path forward is very hard, but I think that it's going to be fundamentally more rewarding.
Yeah, I think just thinking about this, hearing this for the fourth time, the tactics that we're using now to protest, I don't want to say they're antiquated. There's definitely a place for them. But think about what he said. Like during the revolution, they tarred and feathered people. During the civil rights movement, I would argue it was Black led, but it was multicultural in terms of, people who came out and showed up, So those were tactics essentially to get the powers that be scared, Revolution, you had regular schmegular men, because it was white men with guns. So they were willing to shoot you in order for you to make change. Back in the 60s, like billions of people, like white, Black, and all different colors of the rainbow were coming out to say, we hate this.
Right.
Which at that time, especially since it was coming out of segregation, was probably something that would have scared politicians at that time. So the question is essentially, in this current age, what is the things that we need to do in order to scare the people in government? because if they're walking alongside with you, they're not scared of you and they're not going to do anything for you. Like, the way that you get change is to grab them by the balls and actually have them start reassessing their lives. That's the point that we need to get at. I don't know what that will take, but those are the things that we need to discuss, I think, collectively in terms of protesting. And I think right now we're just kind of being lazy. And yeah, I think the idea, as Micah has said, it's very easy now to get people on the streets, especially with social media. But it's the act of, okay, you're getting people on the streets. What is it going to take for politicians to actually move in a way that they're forced to make change beyond what their donors tell them?
Well, and you have to stop their like money-making ability in some way or form, as just as far as you got to put, your body on the gears of the empire somehow, whether that's
so the idea
stopping
that
shipments from being able to get there, or, you see what people like PAL Action and it's going to take risks, like sacrifices will have to be made,
right.
And
so the idea that corporations that are the problem
right
are giving money for you to complain should make you give you the side eye.
Right.
Because corporations themselves are the problem.
Yeah.
So why is the problem basically stoking the fire to the problem that you are trying to fix?
Yeah.
Right? I don't think people think of that, but it's true. It's like, again, why in the hell is Walmart, why is the billionaire heiress to Walmart donating towards a No Kings protest when she herself is responsible for the very issues that people have to go up against?
Right.
Of course, they're going to relate it all to Trump, but they're not going after her. And I think that's the point. It's the idea of these organizations and these corporations need to be, and obviously we've seen some of this in the past, with the Occupy movement, but there needs to be a lot more of that to kind of share, as you said, control the money. That's what.
Well, and I've said it a ton of times too. A lot of these protests are awareness based, they're just trying to get viewers and eyeballs to it to some degree so that theoretically more people are aware of the issue and can individually do things to but awareness ain't the fucking problem anymore. Everyone kind of knows, you ask the average person in the street, they know their government is fucked regardless of who's in office. They know the problems. They can clearly see the problems. It's just politicians are not willing to do any of the solutions that we've known about for years. And and it's because their donors have more power over them than we do. So I don't know how to beat that. There's a lot of power above us that is trying to stop us from changing anything. So, but it's definitely not, salsing down rodeo,
Right. Look, and I said this on Twitter. I'm not opposed for people airing out their grievances in the streets. You should do that. You have a right to do that. But if you're looking to make change, just doing it for one day, just screaming and then going home and things are okay or seemingly okay is not going to help. It's not going to bring change. As Indy said, how are you engaging people in collective actions that will target the donor and corporate class that will actually make them weak in the knees to actually say uncle?
Yep.
Unless we're having those discussions, then these protests are really just for show and just a way for liberal minds to kind of tap themselves on the shoulder saying, I did something towards change, when it really doesn't do anything. So, and it's funny because I was arguing with people even last night about how, honestly, y'all should be, not you guys necessarily, but a lot of liberals, you should have been protesting forever.
Yeah.
If anything, this should not have been the first protest in a minute, like Gaza aside. Like, there should be protests really every single fucking day. Like, how many of these issues has Biden been complicit in? You know, in regards to healthcare, in regards to war, in regards to a living wage. Like, these are issues that were issues on the Biden, but you all were at brunch. Again, not you guys in here, like, but just generally, like, but then because the big boogeyman of a person you don't like is in power, then you decide, oh, we actually have to do something. Meanwhile, there are plenty of marginalized communities in our country that have begged and pleaded you all to actually do something for decades, and you don't give a damn. So to me, it just kind of comes off as, you know, lip service, and just as a way for you guys just to feel like, and funny, this guy was saying like morally, like he used morals. Like, no, it's not about morals. It's just
like that. Do you remember when we talked about the Kamala Harris art? You know, like it's the same kind of thing. It's all just like emotional based, like reasoning
response.
Right.
It's all based on, as Indy said, it's all based on the vibes and the feels and the emotions of it all, because you guys are so, and again, a lot of it is, and I'm going to say something that people are going to be like, fuck you, but I don't care. A lot of it is because you're afraid that Trump is infringing upon the very rights that you think you have. That's why you're making an effort now to do something. But when people's rights have been...
We have a right. They don't have a right. Folks, I hate to spoil your fun, but there's no such thing as rights, okay? They're imaginary. We made them up, like the boogeyman.
Right. But when marginalized people's rights have been affected for a long time, and they've begged and they've pleaded and screamed for solidarity, where were you? So I'm sorry, like, I get it, but it doesn't come off as genuine to me, because God forbid that we get a Democrat president within the next few years, you're just going to go back to the same old, same
back
old,
to fucking brunch.
and like,
there was literally a fucking post about someone like, we'd be at brunch if Trump wasn't in office. Like, yeah.
Right.
You fucking
Which
would be.
I have to wonder if that person was being ironic on purpose.
Right.
I do have to wonder that. But the optics of that was still bad. Because, you know, because it's very much true. Like, especially with what's happening in Gaza right now, people will live under the illusion that Kamala would do something, even though now it's been reported that there was no effort on the Biden administration that they pushed Israel for a ceasefire. Kamala herself said that she wasn't going to do anything different from what Biden was doing, but somehow they would be convinced that Kamala would actually do something. So it just gives them the excuse to live in La La Land. Meanwhile, we're bombing the Middle East. So, you know, and the idea of calling that out, if it were her, would have been like, we'd be tarred and feathered, you know, essentially. But it's easy to do that under Trump, I suppose, because he's the problem. You know, no, he's a part of the problem that, unfortunately, Democrats laid the groundwork for. And
they're only
he's
protesting
exploiting
like
that.
social issues, if at all. Zero the economics is what's being protested, as always.
Right.
You know, so yep. Just felt like feels and vibes. So
yeah. So anyway, if you see Indy, thank him for the article. It is linked in the description if you want to read it on your own. I think I read most of it, if not all. But let him know how much you liked it, you know. And actually, do you agree with him? let us know and let Indy know in the comments below. And if you want to continue supporting us financially, again, Indy wrote this, so this is what your money helps do. It helps us to be motivated and inspired to write and create segments and write articles like these that we get to talk about and share with you all. So that's the benefit of independent media, is that it's led by you. So if you want to continue, if you want us to see doing more work like this, especially if you want to help financially, you can scan the QR code you see at the screen, or you can go to the Ko-fi link that you see at the bottom of your screen there. Or if you're in the YouTube chat, you can type in ! donate, all one word, and the link will pop up and you can click and donate there. You can also donate on Substack, PayPal, and CashApp. Those links are in the description below. And as we always say, we know that times are hard. So the best and free way you can support us is by liking, subbing, and sharing our content. And let us know, did you go to No King's protests? Why or why not? Did you think they were a success than what the media was saying they were? Do you agree with Indy's criticisms and ours by extension of why to us they're not effective? And what ways do you think we should be doing to challenge the powers that be that would actually lead to radical change? Again, that's going to be a kind of a tough thing to think about, but let us know what you're thinking in the comments in the chat or in the comments if you're seeing the clip of this. And help us get to free K. We're approaching 2,500. So hope maybe we can get to free K by the end of the year. We really do appreciate the people who are subbing to us. And thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Cool. Before we get to that, let's go scroll up. So we have Shawnee Cordlord said he shared the segment you did for graduates yesterday with my son and his friends that just graduated. They truly appreciate it. Just thought you would like to know. Appreciate
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah.
Well, we have to thank the person who wrote it. Well, even though I didn't quite agree with everything that she said, but I think a lot of the sentiment I do agree with. So,
yeah.
But thank you for that, Sean. I appreciate. Thank you for sharing our content. And you could tell your graduates and your son appreciate you watching us. So it's actually kind of funny to hear that college students are watching us, because our analytics is. But the fair majority of you are in your 30s and 40s who watch us. So it's nice to hear that younger people are watching us too.
Call me Professor Reefer. It'll be fine. It'll work. It'll work out. Doctor. But anyway, Wesley Donison says, wait, are we trying to out Playground Trump here? A new system does not include political
Who are
parties.
these people?
Agreed. Hey.
Oh, thank you, the Accord Lord.
$10 dues from the Accord Lord. I gotta find a Honda Accord, like muffler noise for him. You know, like a little glass pack on there. It'll be nice. A little blow off valve, be great. So protests can build great egregores. Fear is the only thing that the establishment knows. Says kill your egregores. Wesley again, at a minimum, they embarrassed Trump's birthday parade, even if they accomplished nothing else. I hate to tell you there, guy, they did a pretty good job of embarrassing that on their own. You know? Like,
right.
They did just fine doing that. Kieran Pine, I hope I got that right. Liberals are not, never have been leftists, merely left-wing conservatives. Scratch a liberal, as they say. You know, but anyway, all right, you ready to get to our next one?
Yes,
there was some on the Substack. The Talking Wombat said it's pronounced Harvard. That's what it's pronounced like. Harvard. I mispronunciated it earlier.
A person who lived in Boston for most of my life at this point.
Right there at the fucking Boston Yard, right there by the breweries. You know? Right there and shit. Everyone sounds like they're in the fucking Departed. Park the car at the park and shit. Anyway, all right, let's get to our next one. I love that dub accent. It's so good. Anyway, so I brought this. A lot of stuff has been happening about immigration. Again, I felt like we had all these arguments like years ago, you know, but apparently we got to go through it once more. So this is from Arturo Dominguez, right? He writes, "The making of a criminal migrant. One of the greatest political deceptions in modern history has come to fruition, and the White House is struggling to meet the moment it created with its immigration culture war." And I just thought it had some really interesting points that we're going to get into. So, the Trump admin pulled off one of the greatest deceptions in modern history, second only to the trickery that led us into the war on terror, which they're fucking doing again, and the passage of the ensuing Patriot Act. I'm sure we're going to get the second version of that any day now. By convincing people that so-called criminal migrants need to be deported. The Trump camp and Republicans successfully weaponized a handful of crimes and villainized entire populations of various Latino groups. The Latino-phobic nature of it all surfaced quickly. Before you knew it, the country was parroting bogus anti-immigrant ideas, criminalizing non-citizens. Even some liberal pundits fell for it and agreed that yes, criminals should be deported, but no one defined what a criminal migrant was. We all knew there was no migrant crime wave, that millions of migrants weren't pouring across the border, and certainly that there was no invasion happening. It was all bluster. We all know immigrants commit crimes at lower rates than native-born citizens, and yet people fall for the migrants are criminals shtick every time. Suddenly, anyone who was previously referred to as undocumented was being, quote, equated with illegal. And people began to push the narrative that if a migrant crossed the border between points of entry, which many assume is illegal, they should be deported. However, it's not that simple, because most of them are legal immigrants. Anytime any issue becomes oversimplified, it remains largely misunderstood. Crossing the border anywhere to claim asylum is legal. So, here's U.S. Code 1158 on asylum. Any alien who is physically present in the United States or who arrives in the United States, whether or not at a designated port of arrival, and including an alien who is brought to the United States after having been interdicted in international or United States waters. That's an important bit. Irrespective of such alien status, may apply for asylum in accordance with this section, or where applicable, section 1225B. Collin, I'm betting you're old enough to remember the wet foot, dry foot situation. You heard of this? It's a very Florida specific thing, but I think, Cubans, if they make it, they get dry feet, they land on land. Guess what? You got asylum, baby. You made it. Right. You know, if that foot's still wet, you're going to have a bad time. Like, if they catch you on the boat, you're getting sent back. Like, so that's partially how this works, you know? And I think they're somewhat perfectly fine with Republican Cubans coming over, especially. But to continue, do people file bogus asylum claims? Sure, but rarely. However, the vast majority of so-called undocumented immigrants are, in fact, documented and legal if they have pending paperwork or a pending case. Meanwhile, millions are here legally with no pathway to citizenship. Their spouses, mothers, fathers, and children, and based on the Trump admin's recent actions, now potential targets for deportation via some dubious criminalization to justify it. Despite the attempts at bypassing due process, citizens being rounded up in immigration and customs enforcement actions due to much chaos created by the influx of agents from various federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies, the Trump admin set a new quota, demanding 3,000 arrests per day to meet their vision of what mass deportation should look like, to use inhumanity as a deterrent as much as possible, no matter the harm caused. So here's some of that inhumanity, right? Jack's Page weighing in. We've accepted as a nation that these masked agents can just grab people and take them away without showing ID or warrants. They are racially profiling people and physically assaulting them. Who are these ICE agents?
Hey, yo, what the fuck? Look.
Put him in the car. Put him in the car.
Hey, these are legal citizens, you fucking pieces of shit. Fuck you.
Put him in the car. Put him in the car.
Hey, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? Look.
Put him in the car.
Hey, I got the
So,
shot
again,
here. Don't worry about it.
Masked,
Yo, dude, what the fuck?
fucking
What kind of
black
shit? They're
booted
putting hands
thugs.
on him, dude, and you're putting... That's bullshit. That's...
Real fucking slimy. Yep. So this shouldn't even be controversial. ICE should obviously have to wear a uniform and no masks. This shouldn't be controversial. So yeah, agreed. Thoughts so far, K-Bear?
I mean, yeah, I think I'll probably share a little bit more on this later, but I actually need to change my mouse. There's a lot of rhetoric online in the assumption that immigrants are a problem. And especially, and what's really triggering me is that Black people are saying this among other Black people, that immigrants are a problem. And because, and you can fill in the blank. And the thing is, they never go into any specifics really as to the problem, but it's like, oh, they're bad. But I think it's kind of the idea of like, and I think this is what the Republican Party is trying to exploit. It's the idea like, oh, they're drug dealers, they cause crime and whatever else. Well, as you said, given the article, and we've talked about that here, they're not as likely to cause crime because they don't want to get into trouble. So but that narrative is still being persisted in the media in terms of
Yeah.
they're a problem. And the issues that people, and I feel like I say this way too much, and given that I'm an immigrant myself, I definitely feel for this, especially for me, because I came to this country, just to be completely transparent, and I hate saying this way, but it's true, as a result of abuse within my family. And I left the UK because I felt at the time when I was a child, it was either life or death, literally at that time.
Right.
So people are not leaving their countries. And I remember feeling at 11, I didn't want to leave, but I felt at that point I didn't have a choice. This was me as a child thinking that. So can you imagine an adult, especially a family with children, who might be in a war-torn country, and a lot of that might be due to our policies or the West policies that are affecting those countries.
Right.
Like people are not going into the nitty-gritty. And I think honestly, if more people spoke to immigrants and hear their stories, that people may feel a different way. But it's like it's just the immediate assumption of, oh, they're bad, they're criminals, they're this, they're that, they cause trouble, they need to get out. They take our jobs, they need to get out, but never questioning as to why they're here. And
They're
again,
lazy, they need to get out. Just the immigrant paradox,
Right. But again, a lot of these issues are stemming from the corporate class and what we are doing in these countries that are forcing many of them to leave.
Yeah.
And again, that's maybe just one aspect of immigration. But then the other thing is, you're not making it easy for people to get citizenship if they want to. So I forgot, I'm not sure how to, and maybe this is something you can check maybe quickly online, but I remember when I became a citizen, it cost me, this was a little over 10 years ago now, because I just renewed my, so it's been 10 years. I think it was around, I want to say $1,000 probably a little less to go through that process. And I
Right.
had to take time off work to, go to the embassy to talk to, like for the tasks that you have to take, like and like fortunately I speak English, so it wouldn't have been a big deal. But what if English is not your first language? Like you probably have to pay for English lessons in order to speak the language so that when you take the exam in order to get your citizenship, you are actually competent enough for people to be like, okay, you can actually live here. So it's not cheap. And that's what people also need to realize is that it's not cheap and we're not getting paid. So what are people supposed to do? And these are the problems that I don't think is necessarily being discussed in government. Like, I think there was a viral clip of, I think, Arnold Schwarzenegger going on The View, and he basically called out those women gladly, which I'm no fan of Schwarzenegger, but I think he was very right in terms of, look, like, I think essentially he said, like, you can't demonize immigrants, like, and he was speaking for himself, like, I came, I did what I needed to do, I worked hard to be here, and immigrants generally do work hard in order to remain here and to stay here and to contribute to this country in a way that I feel like I contribute to this country. So they shouldn't be demonized, but we need to make things easier in terms of how to go through the process of becoming citizens and making this a little bit more clear as to if you're seeking asylum, what's the means to do that? If you're trying to get citizenship, what's the means to do that? It's just so nebulous, this whole process, that like, but then now in the midst of war, it's like so chaotic and people are trying to figure out how to do things. And it's easy for people to be like, get out of here versus, what are the things that people should be doing legally in order for them to remain here and stay here if they choose to.
Yep. I always found it funny that like it's always like Latino immigrants too. Like they don't worry about any other culture's immigrants. We just gotta build that wall, build that wall. Like there's no, let alone the fact that like the amount of fucking immigration that happens on foot is like chump change compared to like people flying in from other countries on work visas and then staying here,
Right.
Like, or marriage visas or whatever. Like that's way more of that happening than, like I just always find it funny. But just to continue, to achieve those numbers, and since the Trump admin failed to live up to the migrant crime wave that included gangs taking over apartment complexes and eating your pets, it has now create as many deportable non-citizens as possible by issuing notice to appear orders. When non-citizens show up in court, the DOJ drops their cases, highlighting one of the many policies making hundreds of thousands of migrants vulnerable at a time. I don't know if you knew that, but the administration has the DOJ dropping non-citizen cases because they offer protections against deportations. By doing so, migrants can immediately be taken into custody by ICE agents in waiting and placed in expedited removal proceedings. It has also successfully begun removing temporary protected status for thousands of Afghans and a total of 850,000 Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans, as decided in separate cases. As the admin continues to violate the human rights of civilians, both citizens and not, it is escalating its efforts despite its failure of its propaganda machine. Citizens are pushing back against militarized federal police, supported by their local cops, roaming around in armored vehicles, carrying military-style weapons in their communities to take migrants who are not a threat into custody. No one wants the appearance of a war zone in their neighborhood. But with the Trump admin deploying Marines and National Guard in Los Angeles and still seeking over 20,000 National Guard soldiers to assist with its deportation efforts, we're inching closer to seeing the military on our streets everywhere, even if just in a support role, as the admin suggests. Meanwhile, White House officials are again equating everything from domestic terrorism to Trump's odor, probably with immigration. Last week, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services announced that it would begin targeting visa overstays after the recent attack in Boulder, Colorado. The Department of Homeland Security even took Mohammed Salima's family into custody. There is no established connection, allegations, or justification for the family to be disrupted any further after the tragedy, but for the Trump admin, it's about being as cruel as possible. ICE detainee Hayam Salah al-Sad Ahmed el-Gamal, Salami's wife, Habiba Mohammed Sabra Farag Soliman's 18-year-old daughter and 2 minor sons and 2 minor daughters, and it's processing them for removal. DHS suggests that all are citizens of Egypt, while Soliman and his family's visas had expired, as reported by far-right goons. He applied for asylum for the entire family 5 months before the expiration, according to DHS. So he was definitely trying to get that handled, sounds like. And I'm sure government, bureaucracy was expediting that. So DHS and ICE have taken the family of successful Boulder, Colorado terrorist and illegal alien Mohammed Soliman into ICE custody. This terrorist will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, said Kristi Noem. We are investigating to what extent his family knew about this heinous attack, if they had knowledge of it, or if they provided support to it. I am continuing to pray for the victims of this attack and their families. Justice will be served. A federal judge blocked the immediate deportation of the family. Lawyers representing the family pulled no punches in denouncing the detention of the family after the judge's decision, as they should. Punishing individuals, including children as young as 4 years old, for the purported actions of their relatives is a feature of medieval justice systems or police state dictatorships, not democracies, not that we live in one, said lead counsel for El-Gamal and her children, Eric Lee, via a statement. The Trump admin's vindictive attack on the young family echoes the methods of Nazi Germany, where authorities used kin punishment, Sippenhaft, to intimidate the population. The detention and attempted removal of this family is an assault on core democratic principles and must provoke widespread opposition in the population, immigrant and non-immigrant alike. Meanwhile, the anti-immigrant forces of the current Republican Party is coming at a huge cost and does nothing to reform the antiquated, bloated system we currently have. Instead, they're focused on enforcement and incarceration without providing any tangible solutions to create a more humane process. What that party is after has little to do with immigration and everything to do with Christian white nationalism, a destructive issue that we can't talk about enough. Closing thoughts, Care Bear?
I mean, what more needs to be said other than what I said already? You know?
Well, I'll end us with this then. So this is Brother Khalid. I don't know who that man is, but he's about to school some people, so enjoy the schooling. Here we go.
I can't hear it. Sorry.
You can't hear it? Here.
No.
Mohammed, can you please tell me why it's blacks who are killing hundreds of thousands of blacks in Rwanda and other places? And can you please tell me why from Haiti, blacks from Haiti are just risking their lives to come here to the United States of America?
I'll tell you if I get a chance. Black people have been robbed, as I said earlier, of a knowledge of self. And when you rob people, sir, of a knowledge of self, then it means that they start to take on the characteristics and the nature of their oppressor and their colonizer. And his mind, by automatic, systematic, remote control, rules in our people. He gives them the guns and the weapons and the drugs and the alcohol, the way you did our brothers, the red man and the red woman, brothers and sisters, the way you did our Latino brothers and sisters, and then you pit one against the other and then say, look at what these people are doing.
Any questions?
No.
Muhammad, can you please tell me why?
Nope. Yep. Just figured it was fitting. You know, seems about right. But definitely keep an eye on that stuff and look out for, you know, plainclothes ICE officers, I guess. You know, I don't know. They're gonna find out fast in a couple of these places. Florida's got that stand your ground law, dog. They might not be doing that here. Bad things might happen. Just saying. But anyway, if you want to support us, because YouTube definitely demonetizes, you can go to ko-fi.com/indienewsnetwork, scan that QR code on your screen, and give us a few dollary dues outside of that system. But, you know, if you're a poor like the rest of us, just like and subscribe, hit the share button, leave a comment, let us know what you think. Are you know, how's it looking in your states? Are they coming for people there? But otherwise, thanks for watching. Cool. We did it. Well, to the chats, Boy Wonder. What do we got? People talking about Arnie saying get to the chopper, as he also said that. So Kieran Pines had kicked the dog, kneel for master, beat chest, MAGA manifest. Sure. Fred Edward, what if they're wearing duck boots to keep their feet dry? Are they legal in 2 inches of ocean, but with dry feet? I don't think they have, like, you know, bylaws on that. We'll have to check. But yeah. Well, you're to get to our next one.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say it's long, but
can be, has the potential to be. You know,
right?
So,
so as you guys know, because this was major news over the weekend for now, Israel decided to attack Iran over the weekend by laying them out. And right now, Iran is, I would say, doing a military retaliation right now against Israel back. And so now, obviously, there's a lot of talk in Western media in terms of, oh, we have to go in and take them out because they have nuclear weapons and they're not afraid to use them, and that kind of bullshit, like a la Iraq War vibes. Bringing us back to the early aughts, ladies and gentlemen. So as we try to do here, we want to give, because obviously Western media has a bias, as they would, against people of color in this case, or at least hearing their views or perspective.
No, they would never. Sorry, I had to clutch some pearls real quick.
So we always try to bring perspectives of multiple people and multiple groups of people where we can.
Multiple personality disorders.
Sure, but we want to give perspective to people whose voices are otherwise not heard. So I wanted to highlight this article from Truthout. This was written by Alex Shams, who we might try to interview. Like, I have to check into him a little bit more, but he seems legit enough. But he is familiar with what's going on in Palestine, as he lived in Palestine. I think he was a journalist there. So, but he reported with Truthout, "I'm afraid a bomb will kill me in my sleep. Iranians react to Israel's attacks. Israel has killed at least 250 Iranians as it strikes residential buildings, civilian infrastructure, and military bases. So there's a T there. So let's get into it. On June 13th, Israel launched a surprise attack on Iran. Airstrikes hit buildings across the capital, Tehran, striking residential neighborhoods as well as military sites. In just one night, close to 100 people were killed. Among the dead were dozens killed while asleep in their beds. The attack came after 8 months of calm, with not a single shot fired between Iran and Israel. Prior to the assault, Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei has given his blessing for peace talks with the United States. Over this past weekend, Donald Trump's representatives were due to meet with their Iranian counterparts to work on hashing out a deal. Now, this is a part that mainstream media I've noticed has not mentioned, because Trump was supposed to go over there on Sunday to work out a deal. And just before that happened, Israel decides to be messy.
And then in the dead of night, as Iranians lay asleep at home, the Fire Nation attacked. I'm sorry, Israel attacked.
Right.
Got it.
So,
ugh.
So yeah, just want to give you some perspective there, for those of you who may not know that. For Iranians like Kamar, a 29-year-old engineer living in Tehran, the massive assault came as a shock. I was asleep when my aunt called. There was a big explosion near her house. All her windows had shattered. She was in panic, Kamar told Truthout. I opened the blinds to look out my window. I saw a flash and bang. Suddenly, all around me, I could hear explosions. The earth was shaking. That's when I realized we were under attack. The New York Times and other Western media repeated Israel's military line that Israel was attacking Iran's nuclear program. But as the sun rose over the Iranian capital, it immediately became clear that the strikes had hit residential buildings.
Yep.
Doesn't sound like nuclear weapons to me.
Nope.
Multiple floors of skyscrapers were blown out in Kamarane and Noboran. I'm going to say these towns. So I apologize.
I would think.
Reading them.
Yeah.
Neighborhoods on the northeast side of the city. Entire buildings were leveled in Skatserkan on the west side. Videos emerged of sobbing families on the street in front of their homes, mourning loved ones killed in the strikes. Men with hands over their faces, shrieking in grief. Israel boasts it had killed several commanders of Iran's Revolutionary Guard and nuclear scientists. It also killed their families and dozens of people who happened to be in the apartments around them. Among the dead were Amir Ali Amini, an 11-year-old Taekwondo champion, Nifolar Akwavan, a Pilates instructor, and Ashan Esrahi, a bank teller, and his 9-year-old daughter, Baran.
As a child who did lots of Taekwondo tournaments, definitely feel the hurt on that one, you know?
Right.
So,
as the death toll rolls, shockwaves went out across the Iranian capital. The first missiles hit just as I was saying my morning prayers. Yasmin, a 35-year-old English teacher, told me over the phone. As she spoke, the ringing of Israeli drones in Tehran's sky was audible. Later, my mother found out her friend's apartment had been bombed. Her children were killed in bed by the attack. Everyone on the floor below them was wounded. My mother has been sick ever since she heard the news, she said, holding back tears. We are paralyzed in fear. I'm afraid that a bomb will kill me in my sleep. In the days since, Israel has bombed Iran repeatedly, each with round often only a few hours apart. This has included missile strikes on civilian infrastructure, including fuel depots, oil refineries, and airports. On June 15th, car bombs were detonated in downtown Tehran.
Among other, that's if that was anybody else, Israel would call that terrorism, by the way.
Right.
If car bombs happened, as well as I do believe I heard someone bringing in piles of drones, right? You know, and I think a lot of those caught, as far as Iran has been trying to catch Mossad agents, a lot of them from India, from what I saw, you know. So funny how that works. But allegedly, I'll say that, allegedly, you know. But anyway.
Towers across the city had their tops blown out. Ambulance raced to locate survivors in collapsed buildings. Every morning, crowds emerged to help the wounded, digging people out from below the rubble. Others wandered in a daze, shocked by how quickly their lives have turned upside down. The last time missile barrages fell on Tehran was 1988, when Saddam Hussein was bombing the country in a war where he received Western support. That same year, a U.S. air carrier shot down an Iranian airliner flying from Tehran to Dubai over the Persian Gulf, killing all 290 people aboard. Actually, remember that. In the decades since, the city has experienced relative peace. While Israel has threatened Iran with war repeatedly, recently many hope that Trump will fulfill his promise to avoid a new Middle East war. The shock of the sun attack was compounded by the hope many Iranians felt about the peace process. Until a few months ago, it seemed like our government would refuse to negotiate with Trump, Kamar told me. But then they agreed, and things were moving forward. We are optimistic. And then Israel attacked us right in the middle of the negotiation.
Yep.
This wasn't the first time Iranians have been burned by the U.S. In 2015, Iran and the U.S. under the Obama administration signed a Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, a nuclear deal that provided a framework of peace between the two countries. Iran complied with the deal. But 3 years later, during his first term, Trump ripped it up. Iranians put their faith in diplomacy, and then the United States betrayed its promises.
You would like some zoomings? Yeah.
Iran has launched several missile barrages against Israel in retaliation. The majority was shot down by Israel's Iron Dome, but several missiles hit military installations in the heart of Tel Aviv, as well as residential areas. Some hope the retaliation will act as a deterrent, pushing Israel to stop. But Israel has since hit back harder across Iran. Airstrikes targeting dozens of cities, border posts, nuclear sites, military bases, and the homes of ordinary people. Friday night was the worst night of my life. There were drones everywhere, flying super low. I can't think of a reason why they sent them except to terrify ordinary people. Samira, a 48-year-old journalist, told me over the phone from Tehran. And then we heard the anti-aircraft guns firing, and finally, booms and explosions as the missiles began to hit the city. And then, in the silence, the crying of children. And then we realized, fuck, this is war. It's exactly what we thought it would sound like. She expressed frustration at the media coverage she was seeing internationally.
As you would.
They say Israel has the right to defend itself, but they attacked us first, she said, as the sound of a drone buzzing above her filtered through our call. Israel says it's trying to stop us from getting a nuclear bomb, but Iran respects international conventions on its nuclear program. Meanwhile, Israel has nuclear bombs. And and doesn't allow international inspectors in. They are the last people who should be giving an opinion on it. Samira argued that the attack had convinced many Iranians that they could not depend on diplomacy with the rest of the world. When people in Iran sees Israel's attacks and how America is supporting them, they say, well, maybe the government is right to build a nuclear weapon because we're all alone in this world and no one is lifting a finger to stop Israel from killing us. Not only are world powers not stopping Israel, they are actively supporting its war in Iran. Foremost among them is Donald Trump. Even as he said he was hopeful about the nuclear deal and engaged in a widely publicized spat with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Trump sent hundreds of missiles to Israel beforehand to give it its strongest hand possible. This was on top of tens of billions of dollars the U.S. has given in aid to Israel in the last 5 years. That's Biden, mostly.
And don't forget
Samira
where Israel got the materials to build their nuclear weapons. Don't forget that when you're remembering things. But Samira told me she was horrified to see the effects of Israel's attacks. They are hitting civilians over and over. Sounds like an MO for Israel. You know? So, but
Mitra, an artist in central Tehran who asked to be identified by a pseudonym for safety reasons due to her involvement in the Iran's protest movement, said the experience of facing Israeli missiles had underscored for her how connected the lives of Iranians are to Palestinians. The buzzing of drones and military aircraft above our heads doesn't stop. For 20 months, we heard these sounds in videos from Gaza. Now they're above our heads. Our story isn't separate from theirs. Images of pulverized homes and bodies found in the rubble have underscored the connection. They've also mobilized Iranians, many of whom strongly condemn their own government's repressive policies against Israel and its wars across the region. Mitra was an active participant in the Women, Life, Freedom movement, protesting against Iran's government for its repressive political and social policies. But she rejects claims that Israel is somewhat defending Iranians from their government. Israeli bombs will not bring us freedom, she told Truthout.
Remember, the head of that movement was an active fucking U.S. intelligence agent. Just saying.
Right.
You know. Figured I should put that in before people come after me. I don't support the regime change there. Thank you very much.
There's growing fear that if Israel continues attacking nuclear sites, it might eventually hit something. Locals in Eshafan, Han, who spoke to Truthout, expressed fear that an Israeli attack can lead to nuclear radiation spreading across the region. Actually, that's what I thought about first, to be quite honest. Like, and it's not only Iranians in Iran who have been targeted. Around 4 million Afghans live in Iran, and they too find themselves on the receiving end of Israeli bombs. In a viral video, an Afghan born and raised in Iran said that some of his Iranian friends told him he was lucky he had another country to flee to. His response was that he would stay, fight, and die alongside his Iranian compatriots if that's what it came to. So far, the United States has failed to intervene to stop Israel, and it's hard to see how the war will halt without Trump doing so. US or UN condemnation and an arms embargo on Israel might be able to convince Netanyahu to stand down, but so far, there is little sign of either.
Yep.
More like never, I would say. The result is a terrifying level of uncertainty in Tehran. It is also pushing many Iranians to rally behind their country's military resistance against Israel. Battered from all sides, they feel that Iran's only option is to defend itself. Many of us hate the government, but Israel is bombing us is making Iranians more nationalistic, Kamar told me over the phone. Israel's attacks are bringing people together unlike ever before. Which I would almost argue that's what they want.
Yeah.
Like, as an excuse to keep it up.
Right.
So, meanwhile, Iranians across the country are burying their dead. Their death toll is rising day by day. At last count, it's reached at least 250 people. One of those victims is Parina Asabi, a 24-year-old poet who was killed alongside her family in an Israeli attack on Tehran. A picture circulating of her body crushed under the concrete rubble of her home, blood pouring out of her head. Also circulating was some of the poems she had published. One was translated into English by Palestina Press. Its words are devastating, like a prediction of the way her life was cut short. I wept for you, for both. I wept for both, for you and for me. You blow at the stars, my tears. In your world, the freedom of light. In mine, the chase of shadows. The most beautiful poem in the world falls quiet. You begin somewhere to cry. The murmur of life. But I will end, I burn. I'll be that extinguished star like your sky, like smoke. By Monday, June 17th, Iranians were coming to terms with the fact that Israel's war would not be ending anytime soon. Israeli bombs struck Iran's official TV headquarters while journalists were on air, causing an unknown number of casualties. Airstrikes pounded Tehran, and Iran continued to lob missiles back towards Israel. Israel's military ordered residents to flee homes in Tehran's District 3, an area that's home to around 300,000 people. highways jammed with cars as families left for rural areas they thought might be safer. But shortages at gas stations hindered many people who hoped to flee. With no way out, they hunkered down at home, waiting for morning and praying that their stars would not be extinguished in the dark of night.
Yep.
Any thoughts before we continue?
No.
With
Not necessarily. So here's Fee. She writes, the paradox, if Iran had provable nukes, Israel wouldn't have attacked. This isn't about nukes for Israel and Washington, their go-to excuse for decades, but to weaken Tehran by murdering top officials and targeting from within. If that fails, Israel's Samson option is always on the table. I hope that's understood by Tehran. Diplomacy is a fine strategy when there's a sliver of morality. Not the case here. They showed as much time and time again. No amount of diplomacy will... Go ahead.
Go ahead, you finish.
No amount of
diplomacy know what I'm going to say.
will deter Israel or its major allies and U.S. British intel from the goal of Greater Israel. Nukes ensure Iran's survival, not hinder it. You were saying?
I'm sure you know what I'm going to say.
Sure. The classic, when peaceful protest is useful when your enemy has morality, right?
Something like that.
Who's this quote? I forget this quote.
Well, Kwame Ture, kind of, but he
Yeah.
said in order for I'm not sure it's diplomacy, but in order for diplomacy, I'm going to say
I
diplomacy.
think it's peaceful protest.
Right. In order for diplomacy to work, the people involved must have a conscience.
Right.
And in this case,
yeah.
Right. So
the United States has done. No, I was thinking that too. But Iran, in Fee's opinion, must not only continue doing what they can to keep the West and the great and little Satan at bay. Why stop now? This is the time, and they must actually attain these weapons against perhaps the advisory of their allies who are being tapped to de-escalate. Diplomatic allies who do have relationships with Israel and the Gulf as well. More on that later. Without holding the line and continuing their research, they are at risk, and so is Yemen. I think most Iranians at home understand this, and we know who's got nukes and who's used and is willing to use them. They'll vilify Iran anyway, so that excuse is gone. At the risk of sounding like advocating for weapons, the truth is, as long as Israel and the West have them, no one is safe. Especially the last one on the list, given to General Wesley Clark. Iran can't do it alone. I hope lessons were learned from Syria. An alliance of those ideologically on the same page is needed, and I am also hoping we don't see more trust placed on those who've broken it time and time again. So, Robert in Lakesh, Israel's attack on Iran isn't about nukes. It is about Iran's support for Palestine and groups that fight for the Palestinians. Israel knows it can't destroy Iran's nuclear facilities fully. The Israeli goal has always been regime change. So, Ahmed Eden, I hope I got that right. Tell me again, who is the nuclear threat to peace and stability? P.S. It's estimated Israel has between 90 to 400 warheads. We don't know because they are lying about having them, much they like they lie about everything else. So, again, just that little piece has the nukes. Everywhere else don't.
Mm-hmm.
So, I wonder who's the aggressor there. But here's Fee. Exposed Washington and Israel, specifically Bibi, have been claiming that Iran is close to possessing nukes since 1996. And here's the receipts.
The deadline for attaining this goal is getting extremely close. And Iran, by the way, is also outpacing Iraq in the development of ballistic missile systems that they hope will reach the eastern seaboard of the United States within 15 years.
In 2002.
Next spring, at most, by next summer, at current enrichment rates,
2012.
they will finished the medium enrichment.
Get a new graphic guy, BB, by the way.
Final stage. From there, it's only a few months, possibly a few weeks.
Pictures.
Fucking cartoon flip art bomb.
For the first
he
bomb.
printed off.
The foremost sponsor of global terrorism
2015.
could be weeks away from having enough enriched uranium for an entire arsenal of nuclear weapons.
And that toupee looked bad back then.
Islamic terror regime.
You
Weeks
know?
away from having
That comb over
fissile
is looking
material
thin.
for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year. It could be
2025.
within a few months, less than a year.
So they've been doing this for a minute. Just in case people didn't know. Vanessa Beeley, the United States quietly delivered hundreds of advanced laser-guided missiles to the Israeli regime, knowing that the projectiles would be used by it towards attacking Iran. The Middle East Eye News and Analysis website carried the report on Saturday, identifying its sources as U.S. officials, naming the projectiles in question as air-to-surface Hellfire missiles. There is a time and place for Hellfires. They were useful to Israel as it was seeking to strike the Islamic Republic, a senior American military official told the website. The U.S. also provided the regime with the missiles, knowing that their features specifically armed Tel Aviv for surgical strikes, it added. Also on Friday, the president himself confirmed in remarks to Reuters that he and his team knew the attacks were coming. We knew everything, Donald Trump said. Observers, meanwhile, note that the reports of Washington's unstinting arms support aimed at further equipping the regime to better target the Islamic Republic have emerged, despite the United States being engaged in indirect talks with Iran, ostensibly to give diplomacy a chance. The ME further reported that the Trump administration had prior knowledge of the plan for months. In case you didn't know, but here's Fee again. Trump gives a press briefing on Iran and signals war. Notice how he speaks in ambiguous terms to ensure manipulation.
Look, they should have made the deal. I had a great deal for them. They should have made that deal. 60 days we talked about it, and in the end they decided not to do it, and now they wish they did it. And they want to meet, but it's a little late to meet, but they want to meet, and they want to come to the White House. They'll even come to the White House, so we'll see. I may do that. But it's a shame could have been done the easy way.
You haven't made a decision yet on what to do?
I have ideas as to what to do, but I haven't made a final. I like to make the final decision 1 second before it's due, because things change. I mean, especially with war. Things change with war. It can go from one extreme to the other. War is very bad. There was no reason for this to be a war. There was no reason for Russia, Ukraine. A lot of wars there was no reason for. Look, they should have made the deal. I had a great deal for them. They should have made that deal. 60 days we talked about it, and in the end they decided not to do it, and now they wish they did it. And they want to meet, but it's a little late to meet, but they want to meet, and they want to come to the White House. They'll even come to the White House, so we'll see. I may do that, but it's a shame could have been done the easy way.
You haven't made a decision yet on what to do?
I have ideas as to what to do, but I haven't made a final. I like to make the final decision 1 second before it's due, because things change. I mean,
yeah. So more bullshit. Sam Husseini, Trump pretended to be against the Iraq invasion so he could do this. Most of the pundits pretending to care about Gaza a month ago were only doing it so they can enable the empire on Iran. Most of the pundits being critical on Iran now are largely doing so they can enable targeting China. Trust those who deserve trust. Be a stooge yourself. Be again, as I stated months ago, Putin reiterated Russia's strategic military partnership with Iran does not include defense. Russia offered to work on air defense systems, but he said Tehran wasn't keen, so here's Putin. We once offered our Iranian friends to work on air defense, but they weren't too interested. So that was that. As far as the strategic partnership treaty, it doesn't include any defense-related articles. Our Iranian friends aren't even asking about this, so there's really nothing to discuss. So I find it interesting that Iran's not even asking, So I don't know if they're getting that same deal with China necessarily, There's been some talks of China sending them munitions, but I don't know that to be true. So, but FI confirms Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Andrei Rudenko said a U.S. attack on Iran would bring dire consequences for the region, and while Moscow would offer to help in negotiations, they would not be obligated to aid Tehran in the event of an attack, right? So January, they signed this treaty, right, which was just ratified by the State Duma not too long ago. However, as FI outlines in February, the treaty, unlike the North Korea treaty, did not include mutual intervention in case of an attack, right? So right down there, you know, subject to aggression, the other party would not provide any military or other assistance. So just in case you were wondering, but FI's going to give you the analysis. This clearly means that Iran is not counting on any intervention from Moscow in case of a U.S. attack, but further, it could also point to Russia's incoming role in West Asia. Russia has always tried to be a neutral actor in the region. However, we know neutrality at such a time is certainly a stand on one side, especially when it comes to Israel. Recently, Russia state media and U.S. media reporting that Putin agreed with Trump that Iran should never be in a position to destroy Israel. I've discussed ad nauseum the connections between Russia and Israel culturally as well as regionally. Add to this Israel's vouching for Russia to keep its Syrian bases before the U.S. government because it prefers Russia to Turkey's growing influence. Turkey also been lousy with Russia and made it dependent in some ways due to the Black Sea grain corridor. But now, if and as soon as a truce with Washington over Ukraine clears, the partnership with Ankara will lessen in many ways. Also, with Syria gone, it leaves Tehran vulnerable with a sizable sector of reformists seeking to normalize with the U.S., while the other half does not want this and will urge a standoff. Tehran has to act, but at the same time, it's walking a tightrope. So, while the U.S. has been pushing war with Tehran, it will, in FI's opinion, attempt regime change first. If that doesn't work, count on them as insane enough to try to attack, because now they know some will stand back. Russia has always said they follow the UN Charter and has stated it so in this treaty. However, we all know who the UN represents and is controlled by. We know the international law has been barren of any teeth against the genocidal Zionist entity, as we have covered extensively here as well. So, what seems clear to be is that the non-aligned axis, not so aligned. Some fight for ideals while others are fighting for pragmatic national interests and gain. Unfortunately, that doesn't bode well for anyone beside the West, and especially for Gaza or people of the entire region, who, if I may say so, should understand they need rely only on themselves. As for Russia, they're still fighting a war and being thrown a lousy deal with huge disrespect and arrogance, and as a U.S. American well-versed in U.S. empire, they best tread carefully if any deals are made with such devils, as now, much like Iran, Moscow's held in high symbolic regard by many watching these events unfold. Any questions? No?
No.
So I brought this a bit, which is from Husseini, saying that AP reports today that Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said if Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei continues to fire missiles at the Israeli home front, Tehran will burn. This is clearly a nuclear threat. Israel has a nuclear weapons arsenal, though it is incredibly avoided. I believe Iran was the only nation to mention it at the UNSC meeting yesterday. Israel has a nuclear weapons arsenal, though it is incredibly avoided. Longtime independent activist and writer John Steinbeck has done extensive work on nuclear weapons and Israel's nuclear weapons in particular. His 2008 paper, The Israeli Nuclear Weapons Program, spells out much regarding Israel's policy. He said today, Israel's nuclear threat may not be directed not so much at Iran and other states through what is sometimes called the Samson option, but also to compel the United States government through non-conventional compliance. This is at odds with arguments that have been made by analysts like John Mearsheimer that Iran has escalatory dominance because they have claimed nuclear weapons are not usable. These Israeli schemes were apparently hatched after the 1956 crisis in which the US and USSR used uniting for peace at the UN to compel Israel, Britain, and France to withdraw from the Sinai and Gaza. They figured, well, we better have some fucking nukes in our pocket. So, from Steinbeck's in-depth paper, the aftermath of the 1956 Suez Crisis precipitated top-secret talks that cemented and accelerated the Israeli-French nuclear collaboration. From its inception in the 1950s, Israeli scientists were active partners in the French nuclear weapons program, including development and testing, and providing critical nuclear expertise. The current Israeli nuclear program should be understood largely as an extension of this earlier collaboration. The United States became aware of the Dimona construction in the late 1960s, and the outgoing Eisenhower administration demanded an explanation. The official response was that Dimona was for peaceful purposes, including scientific, industrial, and medical. In reality, the sole purpose of the Dimona plant was to produce nuclear bombs. Israel used its nuclear arsenal not just in the context of deterrent or of direct warfighting, but in other more subtle but no less important ways. For example, the possession of weapons of mass destruction can be a powerful lever to maintain the status quo, or to influence events to Israel's perceived advantage, such as protect the so-called moderate Arab states from internal insurrection, or to intervene in inter-Arab warfare. In Israeli strategic jargon, this concept is called non-conventional compliance, exemplified by a quote from Shimon Peres. Acquiring a superior weapon system would mean the possibility of using it for compellent purposes, that is, forcing the other side to accept Israeli political demands, which presumably include a demand that the traditional status quo be accepted and a peace treaty signed. So that might be explaining why a lot of Arab countries seem to be allies with them. But Israeli nuclear weapons were important in encouraging Arab realism. They were instrumental in bringing Egyptian President Anwar Sadat to Jerusalem in 1977, and may have been even more important in convincing other Arabs, particularly the Palestinians, to recognize that the Arab-Israeli conflict could not be resolved by the sword. From a slightly different perspective, neoconservative writer Robert Tucker asked what would prevent Israel from pursuing a hawkish policy employing a nuclear deterrent to freeze the status quo, which is what happened. Discussing the Israeli nuclear compliance doctrine, dissident historian Israel Shahak further observed, Israel is preparing for a war, nuclear if need be, and for the sake of averting domestic change, not to its liking, if it occurs in some of the Middle Eastern states. So, another major use of the Israeli bomb is to compel the U.S. to act in Israel's favor, even when it runs counter to its own strategic interests. As early as 1956, Francis Perrin, head of the French A-bomb project, wrote, "We thought the Israeli bomb was aimed at the Americans, not to launch it at the Americans, but to say, if you don't want to help us in a critical situation, we will require you to help us. Otherwise, we will use our nukes." During the 1973 war, Israel used nuclear blackmail to force Kissinger and Nixon to airlift massive amounts of military hardware to Israel. The Israeli ambassador, Simcha Dintz, is quoted as saying at the time, "It is a massive airlift to Israel does not start immediately, then I will know that the U.S. is reneging on its purposes, and we will have to draw very serious conclusions." John Steinbeck does not believe this means Israel holds all the cards. Iran is a big, widely dispersed country. Israel cannot sustain itself. The U.S. and Israel are conducting an offensive operation. The U.S. and Israeli governments are desperate and must conform to global will. So, I also brought this, right? This is from George Hazim, right, who we brought last week, right? And he writes, "What's proven to be historic and humiliating turn for Israel's Zionist regime, Iran has dealt a blow not just to Israeli infrastructure, but to the very foundation of its psychological warfare. The illusions of supremacy and impunity has collapsed in real time. Israel's cyber-assisted strike on Iranian military and nuclear infrastructure was supposed to be a game changer, executed in tandem with a sophisticated cyber attack that disabled Iran's air defense system for approximately 8 hours. The operation was designed to disorient, disrupt, and dominate. It failed spectacularly. Within 10 hours, Iranian technicians restored their systems By hour 12, the first wave of Iranian ballistic missiles rained down across Israel, targeting military command hubs, critical intelligence sites, and notably the Weizmann Institute of Science in Rehovot. The Iron Dome, long held up as a marvel of modern defense, was useless. The U.S. deployed THAAD systems guarding the IDF's military headquarters also failed under the barrage. This wasn't just an act of retaliation, it was an unveiling. But the world already knew the Iron Dome was just a plastic bubble. Iran demonstrated that last year with its responses to the attacks and assassinations on one of its top IRGC generals and killing of staff at the consulate in Damascus with its retaliatory strikes of Operation True Promise 1 and 2. Operation True Promise 3 is, as Iran said, would be more devastating and frighteningly destructive. Israel's model of warfare has also been preemptive, provocative, and deeply reliant on its assumption of strategic superiority. From assassinating Iranian scientists to bombing airfields in Syria and flattening apartment blocks in Gaza, Israel's actions have consistently escaped consequences. It fights with without fear of retaliation, armed with American munitions and diplomatic impunity. Its strategy depends on hitting others, but never being hit. Israel's doctrine of one-sided warfare is now bankrupt. The retaliatory strikes by Iran did more than damage Israel's infrastructure. They shattered the myth that Israel is untouchable. What we are witnessing is not just a military failure, but an existential crisis for the Zionist regime. Its greatest weapon, fear, no longer works. For over 2 decades, Iran has been the target of sabotage, assassinations, and relentless threats of regime change while remaining within the limits of the JCPOA. Tehran has shown remarkable restraint, even when its generals were murdered and its scientists were killed on Iranian soil. It's evident Iran's restraint has brought no peace. Instead, it has emboldened Israel to take even more dangerous steps, convinced of its own invulnerability. The message is clear. Non-nuclear nations have no real sovereignty in the eyes of the West or its proxies. In this reality, Iran has only one path to ensure its security: nuclear deterrence, not as a weapon of aggression, but as the sole viable shield against perpetual threats from a nuclear-armed neighbor with a record of regional destruction. Israel's refusal to sign the Non-Proliferation Treaty while stockpiling nuclear warheads under U.S. protection is a provocation. Its demand that Iran remain non-nuclear while it carries out military strikes across sovereign borders is not just hypocritical, it's suicidal policy by design. Iran's nuclear pursuit is no longer about prestige, it is about survival. The U.S. is no longer the force it once was, as Washington scrambles to maintain control in Ukraine. It has now begun diverting munitions and air defense systems intended for Kyiv to Israel, highlighting an overstretched empire trying to prop up too many proxies at once. Russia, meanwhile, has made clear that it stands behind Iran through the January 17th Partnership Agreement. Article 3 of the pact ensures that neither party will insist an aggressor. Article 5 lays the groundwork for expanded military cooperation. This is not theory, this is strategy in motion. Iran's alliances with Russia and China and a constellation of anti-imperial actors in the global south has repositioned it from isolated pariah to pivotal power. In contrast, Israel's reliance on American production and European silence is growing brittle. This war is not just about missiles, it is about whose order defines the Middle East and who has the courage to defy it. Again, we covered it a bit ago. I don't know if they do have military cooperation there, right? So we'll see how that plays out. But for the first time in its modern history, Israel is being hit in a way it cannot hide. Social media is flooded with footage of Iranian missiles striking with impunity. The startup nation now finds itself scrambling to explain why its expensive defense systems failed, why its most protected military sites were breached, and why its population is suddenly experiencing the fears it inflicted on others for decades. The strategic tide is turning. What we're seeing is not just retaliation, it's the beginning of recalibration. A region exhausted by Israeli impunity has finally seen that the Zionist regime bleeds, and that changes everything. In the words of Arnold Schwarzenegger, if it bleeds, we can kill it. Shout out to the Predator movies. But anything you got to say before we end on this nightmare?
As you said, it is. So
yeah. So, just remember,
Our president will start a war with Iran because he has absolutely no ability to negotiate. He's weak and he's ineffective.
In case you were wondering how that plays out. But anyway, anything you say to the people before we get out of this segment? Mossad got bombed, apparently. The Mossad building.
Yeah.
So there's that. You know.
Let's hope there's not going to be a draft.
Or a fucking nuke. That's what I'm hoping for. Please no nukes. Please put those away. Step away from the red button. Just fucking sit down. Calm down. Anyway. Just ridiculous. Well, talking about these things is why YouTube has demonetized us. So you can scan that QR code or go to ko-fi.com/indienewsnetwork if you like to support us outside of that system. But if your times are tough, money's tight, just like and subscribe, hit the share button, send this to your friends. It's the only way it's seen. Otherwise, leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Is your nuclear bunker prepared? You might need it sooner than later. But otherwise, thanks for watching. Cool. What's the chat doing, Care Bear? They behaving? The children behaving?
Seems like it.
Oh, nice. Vicky was picking strawberries and raspberries, so she's just here. I want straws.
Right.
Give me straws. All the birds eat my straws. They like my straws, and I can't get any, Care Bear. Randy Terpstra says, I'm getting uncomfortable 2002 flashbacks and is way too hot here in central New York. Yep. Climate's kind of fucked. Sean said that they stole the materials from us to make. Yep. Over on the Twitch, Max says, I'm scared for Iran. Even though the West doesn't have advanced technology and lacks an industrial base, the West still has unorthodox war tactics and has Iran's allies all tied up. That's what I think a lot of that Ukraine stuff is still over, They're attritioning Russia so that they can't help. Mac also says, we are screwed if they do the Samson option. It's over. That is the final solution in that case.
Right.
Sean said, fuck this non-human. Listen to that devil voice while BB was being played. And then claimed Trump was a walking anti-McDonald's ad. I can't blame you for feeling that way. Kieran says, tween either those monkey ear, no hair should be for thou Nazi. Yep. Russia and China know this is to try to goat them. Sure. I mean, at some point, you might have to fucking stand on business. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, someone's going to have to do fucking something about the empire. But anyway, if Dr. Strangelove taught us anything, all it takes is one crazy motherfucker, general or otherwise, to press the button. Yep. And that was over if you remember that they had AI nuclear defense systems. And they decided to full send anyway. But anyway, you ready to get to our last one?
I am ready.
Let me check. Nothing over on the Substack. Nothing over on the Rumble. Oh, go start. Over on the Rumble says Mossad infantry base described by the Bash, a paramilitary volunteer militia within Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. This discovery is part of the ongoing Iran-Israel proxy conflict. U.S. President signed secret letters that they will not acknowledge Israel's secret nuclear program. So appreciate the bit of information there. But all right, let's get to our last one. So, Collin, What can you do for Palestine? I very much like my thumbnail here. The Palestinian Uncle Sam. Very funny to me. But this is from the EI, the Electronic Intifada, who has Asim Al-Nabi. Please let me get these names right, man. Sorry, my English tongue is difficult. But they write, don't ask me what you can do for us in Gaza. So during a recent conversation with a friend outside Gaza, he asked me a sincere question. Born from his desire to help Gaza and its people, what can we do for Gaza? How many times have we asked this, Care Bear? Quite a bit. This question, what can we do, has been asked since the beginning of the occupation of Palestine, recurring through the decades, and has become even more pressing since Israel imposed a severe blockade on Gaza nearly 18 years ago. And as genocide unfolds in Gaza today, the world confronts this question with new and existential urgency. I almost gave the pat answer we always offer, that Palestine is the cause of every free person in the world and that everyone must do something. Prayer is the least of it. People should continue talking about Palestine, spreading awareness, offering financial and media support, and so on. And while that answer remains valid, the truth is that my friend's question was directed to the wrong person. Should those enduring genocide be the ones to tell those outside how to act? Can we take an hour or two off from being exterminated so we can brainstorm ideas to help our friends outside Gaza figure out what to do to stop the killing? Starvation and destruction we are subjected to every minute. Many individuals are making tremendous efforts for Gaza in many sectors, but when we look at the cumulative effort and its impact on halting the genocide and starvation, it is clear that it was insufficient to stop Israel in the early weeks. More than 600 days later, we continue to witness mass killing. Even the United Nations has failed to issue a binding resolution forcing Israel to halt the genocide, despite Israel killing more than 55,000 people in Gaza since October 2023. It's all there for the world to see, unfiltered, the bombings, the bodies, the starvation, the displacement. Activists and journalists risk their lives to document every horror. Our friends and supporters outside Gaza don't need intermediaries anymore. What's happening here is painfully obvious. You can see it in full detail on TV, in newspapers, and on the feeds of activists who broadcast everything live on their social media. Access to knowledge is no longer an obstacle, and it is the first step towards understanding and taking real action on the ground. Looking back at the importance of mass protests and stopping wars like the Vietnam War and apartheid in South Africa, we must ask ourselves, is the current level of global mobilization enough to stop the genocide in Gaza, which we talked about earlier in our show? Campus movements in the U.S. were instrumental in building opposition to the Vietnam War and ending apartheid in South Africa, and once again are playing a key role in disrupting business as usual during the genocide in Gaza. By contrast, there has been virtually no movement at universities in the Arab world to effectively pressure their politicians to change their complicity in the annihilation of Gaza. Have people of conscience around the world risen in a way that matches the scale of Gaza's genocide? Methinks not. There is a movement making its way from North Africa to Gaza right now. Why aren't more mass mobilizations marching towards the borders of Gaza, demanding entry to deliver aid that all international laws and conventions have already approved? You must stop asking, what can we do for Gaza? A question that implies that all possible actions have been exhausted and thus implicitly justifies inaction. Instead, people must keep building on what has already been done, pulling on all levers so that these combined efforts can help bring an end to the genocide taking place in Gaza. You need to act individually, collectively, creatively. You must find new strategies and new pressure points. The goal is clear: stop the genocide. This is a message from the heart of wounded and grieving Gaza. I write these words hungry while the bombing around me does not stop. I call on every free person in the world to move now. Get up with your colleagues and friends and start doing something, anything on the ground. Do not ask me what you can do for Gaza. That's the question you must answer urgently. You already know enough. What's left is to act. Time is made of blood. Do something. Now. Thoughts before I finish this up with Mr. Husseini?
I get why people are asking, because I think people just want to make sure that they're doing something that Palestinians
Want them to do, yeah.
To do.
Right.
But I think really at this point, it's like desperate times call for desperate measures. Like, and now I say if you want to help, be careful, because
oh, for sure,
there definitely are people or organizations who are trying to exploit this assault for their gain. So I think definitely be careful of how you proceed. But I think even now, I think that's why. And, as much as I get frustrated every week with stories because, they've just come in kind of shit as of late, I think you and India especially have been very consistent in wanting to talk about Palestine, even though, not to say I don't want to talk about it, it's easy to get fatigue.
Yeah.
But I think the one way that I think especially independent media is doing or trying to do, at least for us, is keep talking about it, because from the fatigue, people will not talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, in a lot of ways, you've said this, what Israel wants to happen. They
Right.
don't want people to talk about it.
Well, I think
They
about it
want
like
people.
I think about it like this. Like, if you think about information warfare, similar to regular warfare, battle fatigue is a thing, right? It's what entire armies strategize around their systems. Systems are built up of support and pulling people out and getting them R&R and getting, all this stuff is part of that process. And you have to think about it with the information warfare too, right? Where it's like that battle fatigue is a thing. You're going to have to either be resilient or figure out ways of dealing with it, and that's difficult for a lot of us, especially those with empathy, which, difficult, but yeah. So, but here is Sam Husseini, who writes a very little short piece called Lifting the Veil, which, as U.S. client Arab countries and governments stand idly by, or worse yet, enable Imperial Israel or protect it from retaliation from Iran, they stand exposed for all to see. I wonder what this looks like to pious Muslim women across the Arab world, as these regimes have failed to do anything to stop Imperial Israel's slaughter for 20 months, as Egypt works to stop those trying to bring food to those starving in Gaza through the Sinai. So Husseini says, after my dad died in 2017, I found in his notebook a story of an innocent man being executed. Many people gathered at the square to view the killing. Everyone knows the man is innocent, but no one does anything. They just let the execution happen. Then a beautiful young woman appears. Her head is uncovered. Everyone is aghast. How can you be in the square with all these men without a veil? They ask. She responds, there is no men here, indicting their collective cowardice. So, yeah, I mean, I think one of the factors with this that a lot of people don't why we're asking is because we don't know. We have no idea what to actually actively do against the empire, because clearly they have more economic, military, I mean, you name it, they've got it and are willing to use it. So, they infiltrate movements, they put plenty of roadblocks in the way. So, I personally have no idea what to actually do to deal with this problem, So I don't think it's for us to do right now, really. To some degree, yes, as far as keeping this, keeping the fire on here and making sure that we know what's happening. That's a must for everything. But I do think that it's going to require the non-aligned axis to actually get off their ass and do some shit, as well as us.
Right.
We should not be fucking, lazy about it either. But I don't know what we can do, you know. But
well, I think it's worth. I think at minimum, I still feel it's okay to ask.
Yeah.
But when you get the answer, do it. Like, don't kind of sit on it and then like at some point someone tells you something or you're reminded and it's like and you ask again. Like, so
yeah.
Just do the thing that people tell you to do if they're talking about it in good faith and do your best to do it. I think that's it.
Agreed.
I think sometimes we just think, oh, we have to go above and beyond what we should do or what in our minds we should do. And it's like, no, just do what you can as best you can if you have the time to do it. I think that's really what anyone can ask of anybody at any given point in time in order to help. Like, you shouldn't have to go well above your means. You can if you want, but at minimum, just do what you can with the time that you have, if you have the time.
Right.
That's it.
Agreed. Well, talking about this kind of stuff is why YouTube demonetizes us. So go to ko-fi.com/indienewsnetwork, scan that QR code on your screen, and you can give a few dollary dues if you so wish. But if you can't do that, just like and subscribe, share these videos, share these streams. It's the only way people see them. And otherwise, leave a comment. Let us know what you think is possible. What can we do? Feel free to brainstorm down in that comment section. We'll happily take suggestions. But otherwise, thanks for watching. Okay, bro, we did it. We did it. Yay. We did it. Chat, you have anything to say? Anything to say, chat? Ugh. So, yay, we did it. Well, over on the Rumble, got some people checking in. Let me look at Substack. Got some people checking in there. What you got on the YouTube? Not much. So Vicky Adams says, I am starving and struggling to survive, but you asked me what I should do to help you. Yep. I definitely got what that lady was feeling. Like, I'm fucking busy. Like, y'all figure that shit out. You know? Look at dodging bullets over here. So, CBC Voter says, great show. Vicky Adams says, thank you. Appreciate you, fam. We'll keep the lights on for sure. But anything else you got? What's coming up this week? You know? I know Indy's got a bunch of stuff planned. So
do I or that's a statement?
Yes, that's a statement. Okay. I don't know if he's got one-on-ones necessarily lined up, but I think he's working on them. So, but always check Twitter. Follow us on Twitter, right? At Ginnity News. You can see always the updates. Also on Substack, we always put updates out as well, so you can go to indienewsnetwork for that. Find all the links for things, indienewsnetwork.com, all that jazz. But we'll be here Wednesdays as always. Sundays, how did we miss that? We'll be here again. So I don't know if Angel's going to be back up and running. I thought I heard Jesse wasn't going to do a show. So Indy will probably have some, he'll pull together some video for that to air anyway. We also put stuff on Twitter. You can check out AM Wake Up. We put that up there. We put up some eyes and ears stuff. We put up lots of things. So definitely go check that out. But anything to say to the people before we would head out of here?
We love you.
Yep.
Thank you for supporting us. Bring your friends.
Yeah.
So we're able to grow.
Do that. Remember, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a good week, everyone.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Bye, have a great time.